Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-o-matic presentation and recording for the part of the lesson that has us looking at the mass media. Before we get started, please let me encourage you to open up to today's lesson, scroll down the correct section, and get ready to do two things. Please fill in the content for the guided notes sections, and then of course answer the key concept questions as they appear throughout the lesson doc. Please remember that you can replay any part of this presentation for detail, clarity, or repetition later on. Before we get started, please let me also preface this. The whole purpose of this presentation is to fuse together information from the previous two lessons on the mass media, but also to give you greater foresight moving forward into the rest of the unit about the role that media plays in our everyday lives as citizens. So let's go and get started, and here are some things that I want you to know about the mass media in our democracy. So first off, we have to ask ourselves the question, who are the mass media? Well, there's many different ways you can look at this, and I guess it all depends on the tone and connotation of the conversation. When we talk about traditional media here, in many ways we might be referring to newspapers like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and you deserve to know something here that although newspapers were once really influential and popular, they do have declining circulation. Trying to stay relevant in an increasingly digital world has been sort of the problem for newspapers. Also, television is really important too. Big stations like CBS, NBC, ABC, and more are still really important, but there is a decline of the three major networks with the advent of greater competition from cable and other news outlets. Additionally, magazines are really important too still. Magazines like Time, Newsweek, US News, and The World Report are still incredibly iconic. However, they too are experiencing declining circulation. Now, even though there's a trend towards more of these media companies coming together and merging, the fact is this leads to less competition overall. So in theory, in a democracy, if you want all sides of a story or perspective, it's important to have different types of sources. So that's something else to be aware of as well. Now let's talk about the new media that seems to be involving much of us in our world today. When we say new media, we're talking about, for example, media that maybe might stem from the internet. Weblogs or blogs, YouTube, CNN, Fox News, The O'Reilly Factor, The Daily Show, The Colbert Report, Rush Limbaugh, and talk radio. What do all these people and groups have in common? Well, in a sense, the new media, with the invention and, of course, proliferation of the internet, has allowed it to be more accessible and affordable for most people. There are several characteristics that define the new media in our world today. Of course, new media today is more interactive. We can, of course, interact with the people who make the news on a more personal level. There's more emphasis on entertainment or infotainment, which basically refers to the fact that Americans want to be entertained while they're trying to stay informed. New media is more personalized. In other words, for example, if you search for something once on a social media app, you'll probably get similar search material in the future. New media is also relatively more emotional, and of course, the people who know that will play to your needs when they report the news to you in terms of emotional news over substance. New media is also informal, which means that, of course, sometimes stories today are rather short and contrite on different forms of new media with the internet. Additionally, new media is rather opinionated and biased. We'll get into bias a little bit later, but that's something you guys deserve to know. And then additionally, new media is relatively topical, which means that there are only a select few topics that are actually focused on the internet. But of course, it's up to you to go out front, if you will, and beyond to find out the real story to real true news. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next section here as we talk about the media and public opinion. Does the media actually take an active hands-on role in shaping public opinion? That's a really good question, but here are some things that I want you to consider. There's mixed evidence by the experts that study media and its role on people. Some experts say yes, it still affects public opinion, and here are the following reasons why. Some people say that the television personalizes candidates and elections. It makes them more human to you. Additionally, the media stresses short-term elements of elections and campaigns at the expense of long-term elements. So, for example, I remember back the first time when Donald Trump was running for the presidency, so many people in the media were focused on his personal traits and personality issues, if you will, rather than, of course, policy and potential legislation, which, of course, affected the news. Now, those who consume media in turn can also influence others. So, for example, as a person who studies current events all the time, you have to keep in mind the outlets of personality who might consume the news and then, of course, reflect that onto you. The media also can help set the national agenda as well. There are many different types of priorities that people in the media might have in terms of pushing a common narrative from them to you. Additionally, in our new media today, there's the rise of advocacy journalism and adversarial journalism. Rather than being objective and fair, journalists today try to possibly sway or slant the news a way upon which pushes their personal narrative onto you. And so that's something that, of course, you have to be especially careful of no matter what media news network you happen to watch. Now, additionally, here's some other fun facts about the media. Of course, studies do additionally show that journalists are more liberal and Democrat than the public as a whole. So you have to keep that in mind when you watch many news stations. Media are also a primary linking mechanism between the public and government, so understanding their role as middlemen is also really important too, no matter what news you watch. Additionally, today's media is all about money and for profit, so therefore there's more emphasis on boosting ratings and maintaining viewership. So there tends to be a trivialization of the news, if you will. In turn, people today are also less informed on important issues than what you would imagine. And of course, studies show this all the time, that that's something that we are going to have to deal with as a phenomenon. Additionally, here are some other things that experts might say to counter the yes experts. Some other people believe that media is actually really not that influential over public opinion, and here's why. The mass public pays little attention to the news anyway, so surveys showing how little people know about current affairs and often forget what it sees or reads really shows the status of America today. Additionally, most Americans today have something that we call selective attention. Many focus in on the media sources that they already agree with, and that's it. They never go out of their ways to find different sources that they might disagree with to try to weigh in other sides to gain perspective. Additionally, there's also selective perception, and this means that many Americans might perceive news in a way that they want to view it, and they see what they want to see and filter out the rest, and that's it. Additionally, the media are only one source of influence, and political socialization plays a role in this. This suggests the importance still of the family as a unit, schools as institutions, peers and friends as social groups, and other influences too. So you guys deserve to know something and to keep this in mind, that there's many people in the news media today, of course, who might realize that their role is still important, but there are other traditional roles that are still just as important as anything. And here's the last point. Many people today still consume media for a variety of reasons other than information. Because they're bored, because they want to be entertained, these people are less likely to pay close attention to the hard and the real news and want to analyze it on their own. In fact, I'm willing to bet you that when it comes to researching current events, you would rather have somebody tell you what to think than, of course, to go out there and do your own research and, find the real truth behind a story. But those are some of the things that are worthy to keep in mind. Now, let's go ahead and proceed to the next section of our presentation while we talk about the evolution of media and how it's changed over time. Please proceed accordingly. Thank you.